Well, hi everybody. So since we're just gonna kick into the first guest because that guest Frank Trematozzi has to leave early, and so we'll have Frank talk with us about um, the new MBTA board of directors and the advisory board's role in that. I mean, Frank is here representing Mayor Koch. And so we'll turn it over to Frank, and then after that, maybe we'll go around and do some introductions. Okay, so thanks, Frank.
Thanks. Well, first, Len, I want to thank you for inviting Mayor Koch to the RTAC meeting. Um, Mayor has several MBTA board subcommittee meetings going on today, one that's ongoing right now. And then the one at 3 o'clock is the one that he will chair. So I have to jump off for the 3 o'clock, but I'm with you until like 5 minutes before
Okay.
3 o'clock. So Mayor Koch was appointed to the Mass DOT board by Governor Baker, and he was also appointed to the MBTA board of directors by the MBTA advisory board. At the first meeting this past month of the MBTA board of directors, Mayor Koch was elected as the vice chair of the MBTA board of directors. And he was also elected as chair of the board's subcommittee on planning and workforce development and compensation, which is one of the three standing committees of the board, which is the one that he'll be chairing at 3 o'clock. So that's why and he's in one of the ones now on safety. So the governor is required by law to have two of the MBTA board of director members also be members of the Mass DOT board. So those two directors are Mayor Koch and the chair of the MBTA board, Betsy Taylor. And then so those are the two, and Betsy's been on the Mass DOT board for some time, and she was reappointed by the governor, and then appointed to the new board of directors of the MBTA. So I'm trying to get used to the two different organizations and not intermingling them, if you will, because they are two separate and distinct organizations. Mayor Koch has long advocated for more funding for transportation and public transportation through the Mass Municipal Association, in which he is active. And Mayor Koch is familiar with this organization, RTAC. Those who have been on RTAC for some time will remember Jack Gillen, who was a member of RTAC for many years, but he was also the city's traffic engineer. And Mayor Koch's traffic engineer until Jack retired, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago. But Jack was very active in RTAC, and he would always brief the mayor on the activities of RTAC and the MPO activities. So some of you may remember Jack, and he was a good friend. Now, Mayor Koch has been the mayor here in Quincy for over 13 years now. And I've been working with him in his office for over 10 years, ever since leaving Mass DOT. I left Mass DOT. I was the chief engineer of the Highway Division of Mass DOT, the first chief engineer of Mass DOT Highway, and the last chief engineer Mass Highway. Now, Mayor Koch's interest in MBTA is such that Quincy was host of all the modes of transportation serviced by the MBTA. Commuter rail, Quincy Center commuter rail station. The subway, Quincy has 4 subway red line stations: North Quincy, Wollaston, Quincy Center, and Quincy Adams. The bus facilities and bus routes, right on Hancock Street near Quincy Center is the old bus maintenance facility. And there are actually 14 bus routes that originate and terminate right here at Quincy Center. And then as far as ferry, Quincy used to have an MBTA ferry terminal here by the shipyard, but that was closed suddenly because of disrepair. Since then, the MBTA had sold that property where they had their ferry facility, and so Quincy now only has seasonal ferry service that we were able to put together through a cooperation with DCR, which is the where the docking facility is down at Quantum Point Park near Marina Bay, and the town of Winthrop, which actually operates the ferry. So we only have seasonal ferry service, and the mayor hopes that someday the MBTA will return back to Quincy with some ferry services. So we had all of the modes. Now we have everything except for the MBTA service that they provide for ferry service. I can tell you that Mayor Koch has long felt that the MBTA was insufficiently funded and inadequately invested in its ability to be able to maintain a state of good repair, which is an example, the ferry terminal here that went into disrepair so bad that they had to sell it, they couldn't repair it. And also Wollaston Station here in Quincy was the last station on the red line that was inaccessible, which is finally fully accessible thanks to the commitment of Governor Baker in investing in the red line as he has. So now Wollaston, the capital project was completed, I don't know, about a year ago, maybe more, and is fully accessible now. Even though in the past, the MBTA was, not much attention was paid to it by past administrations. I think the mayor recognizes that Governor Baker's administration has been spending a lot of investment in the MBTA, and he appreciates the governor's administration work that has been going forward in investments with the MBTA, and he looks forward to these times as an opportunity for the future investment in transportation, especially in light of the weekend passage of the Federal Infrastructure Investment in Jobs Act that now is on the president's desk. So we're happy that we're able to host the MBTA's first electric bus facility that is going to be built at the Lowe's site, the former Lowe's site along Bergen Parkway, which is right near Quincy Adams Station. We anticipate that capital project will be completed in the bus operation, in full operation in maybe 5 years. I know that the T is working on that design now. As chair of the MBTA Advisory Board, representing 176 cities and towns in the MBTA district, whose communities actually contribute about over $177 million in direct assessments to the MBTA service. And now with his appointment to the MBTA Board of Directors, Mayor Koch has set a goal to eventually visit all of the 176 member communities to hear about their issues and concerns with the MBTA services that they receive. So that's where Mayor Koch is coming from when it comes to the MBTA and the MBTA service, his past experience with it, but his look forward to the opportunities that might be ahead for improvements to the MBTA, working closely with the administration, with the governor and General Manager Povtak. So that's a brief summary of how he looks at it. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have also.
Well, thank you, Frank. Really appreciate that. And so hands up, for questions. We have John McQueen.
Hey, Chief. Good to see you.
Hi, John. How are you?
Yeah, terrific. Thanks. Say, aside from, let's say, Mayor Koch's uh, desire and vision to have upgrades and just state of good repair, what is his goal, I guess, or vision or wish list of services that would be coming into or through the, let's say, the South Shore quadrant, uh, in terms of light rail, ferries, anything? How is he really seeing on improving the connectivity through the MBTA?
Well, I mentioned the ferries because he really is concerned and thinks that water transportation is one of those alternatives that needs to be explored in the future because of congestion on the highways and because the rush hours on the MBTA in order to the past rush hours, how they were. I think ridership is coming back. It isn't back the way it was. The buses have ridership on buses has been coming back a lot quickly, but you know, South Coast Rail is one of those which is probably near and dear to your heart, and that is moving forward. And I think he looks forward to getting the reports on the progress that's being made, and hoping to give some input wherever they need to have input in trying to make things better in the system for the long run. I think he's also looking at the fare collection process and how it could be made, technology, making it better and easier. Not necessarily a Charlie card of the future, but maybe you use your phone to actually pay and get access. I think he's looking forward to learning more because he's just beginning his role as on the board, but he does see that there are plenty of opportunities out there and wants to learn what other transit agencies are doing to maybe see if the T can be improved in that regard also.
Thanks, Chief.
And Franny?
Hi, Franny Osmond from Acton, Mass. And I was on the, I am on the North-South Rail Link Working Group. And I would love to know what Mayor Koch's experience and interest is in the connecting of the two systems that we have now with stub end stations.
So Franny, you probably, if you've attended the State House meetings with John Bussinger and the governor, you've probably seen me there because the mayor has asked me to keep an eye on that because he looks forward to a connection between with the North-South Rail Link so that somebody from the North Shore can actually work in Quincy and vice versa. So he does look at that project favorably. I know that he knows that there's limitations on the funding of it at this time, but it's something that he would look to in the future.
Thank you. And I don't know much about the fare-free option, but when we talk about fares, my gut feeling is that the amount we'd save with a lot of overhead might be made up for with increased ridership. And anyway, I just wondered if his office has looked into the fare-free question.
So regarding the fare-free, nothing is free. The mayor believes that if there is going to be a free fare, that the resources have to come from somewhere, because we all know nothing is free. So I think I've heard the governor most recently say if Boston would like to offer free MBTA service, then Boston should pay for MBTA service. I think the mayor thinks that as long as there's a funding source, then that's something to look into.
All right, set for any? Great. All right, thanks. I think that means yes. Andy, I thought I saw your hand up. Oh yeah, it is. The color fades into the background, so it's really hard to see. So you're up.
Yeah.
Huh?
Thanks, Len.
Sure.
So I'm Andy Reeker. I'm at the Community Development Department in Cambridge. You know, I think one of the other folks here in the city is also on the advisory board with Mayor Koch, so I don't think I need to take up too much of your time, but since folks are kind of asking about all the other modes, I needed to throw in this question since I really love buses. So I'm glad to hear that you all are super excited about the new bus facility. I think that unlocks a lot of potential for new services. I think beyond the individual buses and the vehicle maintenance that needs to happen, I wanted to get a sense from you what you or the mayor may be thinking about with additional hours for the service actually being run. So of course, the problem is, do you have enough vehicles, but then the manpower or the person power to be able to have the services? I'm wondering how much of a position maybe Mayor Koch has taken on that so far.
So I know that he was attending a meeting this morning where they were one of the subcommittee meetings that I sat in for part of it on, where they were talking about the need for them to hire more people, especially bus drivers and train drivers. And that has been a challenge to them, especially in these times where it's hard to find people. For the MBTA, they not only have to find the people, but they have to train them first. So there is a lag in the time it takes for them to actually get somebody up to speed and actually out in the street driving the public around. As far as filling all the schedules, of course, he believes that it is important because what's happening now is the bus drivers or the train drivers are working a lot of overtime. Part of it is also the fact that during this pandemic, they have been able to accelerate some of the projects, which has been an advantage while the ridership has been low, because it would be disruptive to riders as they're doing their improvements. To take advantage of the pandemic of the past so that they could actually accelerate some of these projects so that when they do get back to full service, that it won't be so disruptive for the ridership anyway. But the challenge has been getting enough, for instance, bus drivers to help support that capital program. And they've been actually hiring outside bus services to help with the capital programs that they have, which is a problem for them when it comes to the collective bargaining and the unions. So those are some of the issues that they're dealing with right now.
Thank you. So Laura, Ms. Weiner.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Weiner from Watertown.
Hi, Laura.
Just wanted to ask about communication with the MBTA Advisory Board. Do you think that it will be like an agenda item whenever we meet to kind of get an update from the mayor?
Yes, I believe that one of the regular scheduled advisory board meetings will also include an update from the mayor regarding MBTA board activities.
Yeah, I think I would like to request that or suggest it, because I think that that's the most, sometimes it's hard to say at this time what the issues are, the important issues are to us, but I think it would be so useful to know what they're discussing and to be able to give input onto that.
Yeah, he plans on doing that. The updates that we've received in the past, as you know, Brian Kane attends all of the MBTA board meetings.
True, yes.
He tries to keep the membership appraised of what's going on.
Yeah.
So between Brian and the mayor, I'm sure that we'll be able to get regular updates.
Do you think Brian is still going to go to those meetings?
Brian will still attend and I think he attended the last one. He should still be attending all the MBTA board meetings. He doesn't vote as executive director of the MBTA advisory board, but at least now the advisory board has a vote through Mayor Koch.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. John Stewart.
Hi, John.
Am I live?
Yes,
Mike,
Yes, you are.
we can see you and we can hear you.
Frank, it's a pleasure to be in your company once again. You've given a very good, like 20,000 foot overview. I'm wondering, what is it that Quincy needs locally for transit? Are MBTA services currently sufficient? Do you see need for future changes?
No, the MBTA services in Quincy are not sufficient. Number one being the ferry being abandoned by the T is one issue, but I think the mayor looks forward to what he sees happening at the T now. He actually volunteered the MBTA bus facility being at the former Lowe's site, which actually ends up costing the city over $500,000 a year in lost revenue from real estate taxes. Yet he sees that the electric bus moving forward is something that's critical for the future. And so that's why he's agreed to have them move in over at the Low site, because he wants to try and, Quincy has diesel buses and they're polluting, of course, everywhere. And he's hoping that the new electric buses, once the technology is there for them to be able to run all of their routes during the winter without having to be recharged or recharged as often, he's hoping that that will be the wave of the future. And that's why he stepped forward, and Quincy's going to have the first electric bus facility that the MBTA will own. Yes, it's costing the mayor some political capital as well as the city some dollars, but the mayor looks at it for the future as being something worthwhile.
Thank
Great.
you.
Great. Well, I know you have to go, Frank. So I'm just going to say two things that maybe you or the mayor can answer later on, because we'll love to have you back in maybe 4 or 6 months. First is whether the MBTA might make it easier, for municipalities that have bike paths that use our property that is owned by the T, make it easier for them to access those pathways, because right now I think there are some liability issues, that the MBTA requires that the towns have a high level of insurance, and so I know it's the municipality's responsibility, but there may be some way that the MBTA can work with the municipalities, maybe if the municipality is willing to file a waiver or something like that. I just put that out there as a high level issue that's been brought to my attention. And the other was what you mentioned about technology for fares. One of the problems or one of the tensions we have is when we want to deploy technology, everyone can't use it. And there's always a percentage that can't. And so the question is, how do we advance the technology for the vast majority of riders, users, but also provide for a way for those who don't have the technology, to continue to use the system, in at least a way that is as good as what they have. So just a couple of things, and think about it, and we can discuss later. But thank you very much for your
Thank
time.
you. I appreciate it. And I'll definitely come back whenever you need. Thanks.
Yeah, 4 or 6 months. So
care,
take care.
everybody.
Bye-bye. So we need to get him out here. That was happy to have him. So I think we have time to do a quick round of intros. And so I will just pull up the participants list, because I have to tell you one thing that I always find hard is when people say call on the next person. So I will just go down the list, and we will start with Scott.
All right, Scott Sudeikis, representing the National Rural Transit Assistance Program, and I'm also vice chair, current vice chair of RTAC.
Thank you. John McQueen.
John McQueen, Walk Boston.
Thank you. John Stewart.
John Seward, move Mass.
Thank you. Laura Weiner.
Laura Weiner, Watertown Planning Department.
Thank you. Let's see, Lisa.
I'm Aleida Lisa. I'm just interested in regional transit. I'm just curious. I'm just a public
Thank you.
person.
Thank you. Andy Rieker.
Good afternoon, everybody. Andy Rieker, transit planner in the city of Cambridge at the Community Development Department.
Great. Thank you. Ann McGann.
Hi, Ann McGann. I'm the project manager for the Long Range Transportation Plan at the Boston MPO.
And our next guest, at Ida Matchak.
Hi, thanks for having me. Etta Matchak, City of Lynn, Department of Community Development.
Thank you. Franny Osmond.
Hi, Franny Osmond, from Acton, Mass. I also am a resident, just involved in public transportation issues for many years.
Thank you. And apparently out for a nice walk. Fred
I
Mosley.
can't help myself.
That's fun.
I have the
Multitasking,
opportunity. I'm sorry.
multitasking at its
Sorry.
best.
No need to apologize.
No,
I just
definitely.
don't want to make people dizzy. That's why I take myself off the picture.
Gotcha. No problem. Thanks. Let's see, Fred Mosley.
Yeah, Fred Mosley representing the American Council of Engineering Companies.
Thank you. Jen Rowe.
Good afternoon. I'm Jen Rowe, planner at the Boston Transportation Department.
Thank you. So I'm seeing John McQueen in my list again. No, that's Devin Ryan. Can we call it John? My list is getting screwed up. Jonathan Church.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Church, manager of MPO activities at CTPS and the MPO staff.
Great. Thank you. Michelle Scott.
Hello, I'm Michelle Scott. I'm a member of MPO staff and a co-manager of the Long Range Transportation Plan.
Thanks, Michelle. Owen McDonald.
Owen McDonald, Town of Weymouth traffic engineer in the Department of Planning and Community Development.
Thank you. Sandy Johnston.
Andy Johnson, transportation planner with MPO staff. I do a lot of things. Just listening in today.
Great, I love it. Steve Olenoff.
Steve Olenoff from the town of Westwood, also representing the Trick subregion.
He does a lot of things too. Todd Curran.
Todd Curran, transportation administrator for the town of Brookline.
All righty. So I think I got everyone on the list. Actually, we have someone calling in on phone. Last four digits 7495.
This is Barry Steinberg, Association for Public Transportation and resident of Quincy.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks for joining. And so I think I have everyone on the list. If I didn't, please raise your hand while I say that I'm Len Diggins, representing the Mbta Right Oversight Committee and the chair. I don't see any hands up. So we'll now go to the kickoff of the Destination 2050, the next iteration of the Long Range Transportation Plan with Ann McGann.
Right.
And Michelle Scott.
Yes. Great. Thanks, Len. And Matt, am I able to run my slideshow? Let me just check. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to talk about the development of the Boston MPO's next Long Range Transportation Plan, or what we call the LRTP. Both Michelle Scott are co-managing the plan this year, and she is also here to help answer any questions. Sorry. So today I'm going to give a quick overview of the LRTP, a schedule for the adoption of the new LRTP, Destination 2050, and then I'll go through the tasks included in the schedule, starting with the implementation of the current plan, Destination 2040, followed by the tasks to complete the new plan, Destination 2050. And I'll finish up with next steps in the LRTP process. And then I'm going to open it up for questions and a discussion on your transportation needs. So the LRTP is one of the 3 certification documents that the MPO is federally required to develop, along with the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and the Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP. The LRTP sets the framework for much of the work done by the MPO. It establishes the vision and goals of the MPO, which guide decisions about investments in the region's transportation system to bring the system from its current state towards the MPO's vision for the future. The vision and goals are the basis for the criteria used to select transportation projects in the TIP and the LRTP and studies in the UPWP. So the LRTP also establishes the transportation investment programs and, sorry, am I doing that, Matt, or?
Nope, I apologize, that was me. My mouse is just way too sensitive. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, sorry. So the LRTP also establishes the transportation investment programs and major projects that will be funded in the future TIPs to meet the MPO's vision. It is required to be updated every 4 years and looks out at least 20 to 25 years in the future, and it must be a financially constrained document. So the current plan, Destination 2040, was adopted in 2019, and we are now kicking off the development of the next LRTP to be adopted in 2023. So the next plan will be called Destination 2050, extending the planning horizon year out to 2050 to coincide with other planning activities in the area, including MAPC's Metro Common and the Commonwealth's Global Warming Solutions Act. So I'm going to go through the schedule for the development of Destination 2050, and then I'll get into more details about each task. As I mentioned, we are now implementing the recommendations of the current plan, Destination 2040, through our UPWP, TIP, and other MPO activities. Implementation of Destination 2040 will be ongoing until the new LRTP is adopted in 2023. So the first step in developing Destination 2050 is to identify the region's transportation needs. And this includes 2 tasks that we're starting to work on now: developing the needs assessment for the region and conducting exploratory scenario planning to consider possible futures. We'll be working on this through 2022. And then we'll revisit the vision, goals, and objectives using information that we have collected while identifying needs in the region. And this work will also be ongoing through the end of 2022. Then we'll prioritize the investments using the available federal funds beginning late in 22 and into 23, with the final plan adoption in 2023. So as I mentioned, during the development of the new plan, the MPO will continue to implement recommendations from Destination 2040 until the new plan is adopted in 2023. So in Destination 2040, the MPO revised its goals, which included strengthening the transportation equity goal and strengthening resiliency under the system preservation and modernization goal. So some examples include, for equity, the goal and objectives were refined to focus on the potential impacts of MPO investments on equity populations. We also added 2 new objectives: improved accessibility for people with a disability and investments to support transportation needs of the elderly and youth population in the region. So for resiliency, we strengthened the goal to include planning for the resiliency of the transportation system. So these revised goals were used to update the TIP project selection criteria, which are now being used in TIP development. Goals were also used as a basis for the selection criteria for studies in the Unified Planning Work Program. The Complete Streets program was revised to add dedicated bus lane projects as part of this program. The Transit Modernization Program was established, and we proposed funding for this program to begin in 2025. And just this year in the UPWP, the MPO established a dedicated resiliency program. Also last year, the MPO changed its definition of the major infrastructure program and changed the criteria for projects that had to be listed in the LRTP. So these next 2 slides recap the decisions that the MPO board made on the major infrastructure investment. So this slide shows the updated definition of the major infrastructure program. So for roadways, it includes projects that meet at least one of the following criteria: capital projects on interstate highways, principal arterial freeways and expressways, and all sections of roadways that are classified as principal arterial other that have fully or partially controlled access, and projects that cost $50 million or more. For transit, it includes projects that meet at least one of the following criteria: all capital projects that add new connections to or extend the rail or fixed guideway transit network, and projects that cost $50 million or more. So the board, MPO board also changed the projects that are required to be listed in the LRTP to be those that are required only by federal regulation. And these include projects that change the capacity of the transportation network, such as a new travel lane or new transit service. And they also decided to include projects projects that are in the environmental process that use federal transportation funds. The board also chose to list additional projects at their discretion. So for project scoring, the MPO board voted to rescore all major infrastructure projects that have been listed in the LRTP when they are ready to be programmed in the TIP. And they also voted on the assumption that a project will not automatically be programmed in the TIP if it is included in the LRTP. All of the information that has been developed and used in the implementation of Destination 2040 will be considered and built upon in the new LRTP, which again is Destination 2050. So now I'll move on to the tasks that for developing the new plan. So one of the first tasks is to identify the transportation needs in the region through the LRTP's needs assessment, as well as through exploratory scenario planning. Staff is now in the process of revisiting and updating the LRTP needs assessment in order to establish the existing and future transportation needs in the region. So we'll perform analyses using information from our travel demand modeling tools, which use existing population, housing, and employment information, as well as the attributes of the transportation network, and then forecast that demographic information out 25 years and runs the model to identify where there may be future needs on the existing system. Any work on the needs assessment that we do over the next year will use the current demographic data from Destination 2040. Staff is currently participating on the statewide socioeconomic committee, which is developing the new projections out to 2050 using the new census data. And we're working with MassDOT, MAPC, and the UMass Donahue Institute to develop these projections. Once we have the new projections, we will rerun any model analyses to see if our results have changed in any way. We'll also look at analyses and recommendations from existing studies done by CTPS and other agencies and organizations in the region. And we will do outreach to organizations and the public to gather their needs. And today, we'll be asking you about your transportation needs. So as part of the needs assessment, we will identify needs by the MPO's 6 goal areas, which are shown here on the screen. The safety of the transportation system, system preservation and modernization, capacity management and mobility, clean air and sustainable communities, transportation equity, and economic vitality. So today for the needs assessment, we want to ask you about the key questions shown here. What transportation challenges and opportunities do we have today? And what challenges and opportunities might we face in the future? So we're going to put a link to a Jamboard in the chat so that you can start adding some of your thoughts on your needs in the region as I go through the rest of my presentation. You can type your needs on a sticky note that can be found on the left side of the Jamboard. So exploratory scenario planning is the second way we'll identify additional transportation needs. In exploratory scenario planning, we can look at possible futures that may occur in the Boston region. This past summer, staff conducted the Big Ideas study, and as part of that study, we conducted a number of focus groups with the public to solicit their ideas for potential scenarios that we could explore as part of Destination 2050. Some of the ideas that we heard include looking at the future of remote work from home policies, transit expansion, resiliency of the transportation system, and what the population, housing, and employment might look like in the future. So information from the Big Ideas study was presented last week at the November 4th MPO meeting. The Big Ideas presentation began the discussion on prioritizing scenarios that we can begin to analyze. And that information can then be used to make strategy recommendations for the LRTP. So the next step will be to revisit and refresh the MPO's vision, goals, and objectives. Staff will make recommendations based on information that was collected through outreach and needs identified through the needs assessment. And once the MPO has reviewed and made changes, they'll be released for public review. The next task is to prioritize investments for the recommended LRTP. And this will begin in late 22 through early 23. And this includes identifying the investment programs and the federally required major projects to be listed in the plan. It will also include identifying projects that meet the new definition of the major infrastructure projects, although they may not have to be listed in the LRTP. We went 1, 2. Sorry. So the first step is to identify the universe of projects and universe of programs lists. So the current universe of projects list includes projects that are shown here on the screen. So it includes all projects that have been programmed in the LRTP and TIP, any active MassDOT projects, projects identified as important to meeting the region's transportation needs as described in the needs assessment, projects that have emerged from studies conducted by the MPO and others, projects in the MBTA's capital investment plan, and projects included in the MBTA's Focus 40 and other projects identified by the MBTA. The universe of programs list includes investment programs that are considered for inclusion in the LRTP, as well as programs that include projects that do not have to be listed in the LRTP, like the complete streets or bicycle and pedestrian programs. So this slide shows the current MPO investment programs that were established in Destination 2040, along with the funding goals that were established for each of the programs. So they include the Complete Streets program with a goal of using 45% of the MPO's target funds for this program, the Intersection Improvement Program with a goal of 13%, Bicycle Network and Pedestrian Connection Program with a goal of 5%, Community Connections, 2%, Transit Modernization, 5%, and the Major Infrastructure Program, where the board decided to allocate no more than 30% of its funding to this program. So after the universe of projects list is completed, the projects are evaluated using criteria based on the MPO's goals and objectives, much like is done for the TIP. The LRTP's selection criteria are more high level than the TIP criteria because we may not have as many details on some of these projects because some may not have gone through the design process yet. And only those projects that are sufficiently defined are evaluated. Then we will receive the available finances for the LRTP timeframe for MassDOT. That usually occurs in January or February, and for this plan, it'll be in 2023. Then we'll identify the investment programs along with the funding goals, followed by identifying the federally required projects that must be listed in the recommended LRTP. And then finally, the MPO will adopt the draft and final LRTP in 2023. And that includes analyzing the draft set of projects, using the travel demand model to identify transportation equity and air quality and greenhouse gas impacts. The MPO will vote to release the draft LRTP for public review, and then the comments will be addressed, and the MPO will vote to adopt the recommended LRTP. So I just want to show this schedule again to show how all of these pieces of the LRTP fit together. Again, we'll be implementing recommendations of Destination 2040 until the new plan is adopted in 2023. We will be identify the region's transportation needs in the needs assessment and through exploratory scenario planning, working on this through 2022. Then we'll revisit the vision, goals, and objectives, again, ongoing through the end of 2022. And then we'll prioritize the investments using the available federal funds beginning late in 22 and into 23, with final plan adoption in 2023. We also launched the Destination 2050 website last week, and includes the schedule for plan development and also a story map outlining the input that we heard from our big idea study for scenario planning. And we'll add information and documentation for the new plan on the website as it becomes available, so you can check it through the development of Destination 2050. So finishing up, I just want to outline our next steps. As I mentioned, Michelle Scott presented the big idea study, and the MPO will begin discussing potential scenarios in December. Staff will continue to participate on the statewide socioeconomic committee to develop the 2050 projections and allocations, and will continue to update and refresh the needs assessment. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions and discussion. We also want to hear about your transportation needs in the region, and you can either put them in the Jamboard or tell us about them as part of the discussion. And I'm going to put these this slide up again with the questions we're asking on your transportation needs, but we can also share the Jamboard as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Ann. And so if you want to ask Ann questions, just raise your hands. I'm looking electronically, so I'll need you to raise your hand, do the reactions key. So we have Andy.
Yeah, so it's been a busy past couple months for me personally. So I wanted to actually ask Anne and Michelle if you could just give us a couple of the big ideas that you had considered. I'm actually very curious. And since we have you here, I thought I'd be able to request maybe a quick summary, just a couple sentences on what were those big ideas.
Yeah, I can answer that. And just as a heads up, the recording for that particular presentation, if you do want to see what the MPO presentation looked like, will hopefully be on the MPO's website, not the website, the YouTube page within a couple days. So you could check it out there. Essentially what this process, the Big Ideas project was focused on doing, was holding a series of focus groups with different organizations in the region that were kind of operating at the intersections of mobility and other major planning areas like housing development, public health, environmental justice, things like that, and talking about what the major forces that they think would shape transportation looking out to our horizon year in 2050. And there's, of course, a lot of things that came up, some examples, but certainly not by no means an exhaustive list. They're figuring out how to account for the, anticipated effects of climate change, the future of remote work, people's changes around their preferences in terms of urban and suburban living, the, potential increased prevalence of electric and autonomous vehicles. So what we're doing as MPO staff right now is trying to kind of process those ideas a little bit further so we can turn them into ingredients for our exploratory scenario planning process, which will basically involve looking at a set of alternative futures, and seeing how we can pick strategies that we pursue through the LRTP that will work effectively in multiple futures, since we're kind of uncertain of what our future may hold.
Thanks, Michelle and Andy. Anyone else?
So Len, do you want me to share the Jamboard and see what some of the ideas? I know that some people are putting information in that Jamboard.
Sure, that's fine. I haven't because I can't multitask on that level. So I'm glad it's going to be up for a few days. I might mention a couple of things, verbally. But yeah, please do.
Okay, so Matt, in order for me to share my screen, do you have to stop sharing or can I just share?
Nope, you can just click New Share on the toolbar and select the window that has the Jamboard.
Well, I hit that and it says you cannot start sharing while other
You know what?
sharing.
Try that again now. That's my fault. I apologize.
Did that work?
Yeah,
That works.
sure does. And I don't see we have a question from John Stewart.
Thanks, Lynn. I just want to register a general impression that this isn't sufficiently aggressive. We're in the midst of an environmental crisis, which is going to cause the loss of hundreds of billions of dollars of real estate investment in this region. And we've got to be moving to move transportation more to transit and more to less carbon-based forms. And I just don't see that being realized in this plan.
Well, we're just starting the new plan. So that's part of what we're doing. We heard a lot about that as part of the big idea study. And we're starting the scenario planning, looking at one of, the MPO will make decisions on, they'll prioritize the scenarios that they want to look at, one of which we heard a lot about resiliency of the system. We heard about, electric vehicles. So as I said, this is, we're at the beginning of that process. So definitely we'll take that down. We can put it in the jam board so that all of this can be considered as part of development of the new plan.
And one thing I'll add to that, John, is that I think one of the limitations of the scenario planning by the by staff is that it has to be fiscally constrained. But I think we can do some envisioning on our own that isn't constrained. And just see what we come up with. And maybe some of the ideas. The board or the NPO won't be able to take our vision and make it the plan. But maybe there'll be some elements that come out of that kind of brainstorming or wishful thinking that may be salient and applicable to the plan.
I just wanted to add something. We're also going to be sharing, our work with the other agencies because we can't implement everything. So we want to share this information with the implementing agencies as well, so that they can use it in policy and decisions that they're making.
So before going to John, I'm going to go to Michelle, just in case Michelle had something to say in response to what I was saying or what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna, I think Anne covered most of the comment I was gonna make. But, one of the advantages of the planning process and not just, the production of a final product, which is federally mandated at the end, is the conversations that we have with the other, all kinds of stakeholders, but particularly, the other major transportation planners and agencies and organizations in the region. The conversations that we have the potential to advance action even before the plan itself is finished. And that's kind of one advantage of how the process works.
Yeah, I hear you. And so John McQueen.
Yeah, thanks, Anne, and thanks, Michelle. It seems as though, at least recently, we've been losing ground to the single occupancy automobile again, and that transit is still perhaps not found to be as practical to meeting the kinds of, let's say, just in time to destination needs. And one of the things I've seen that might be helping us and that it might have the opportunity are those, is that center lane, bus lane in JP and such that might allow a more quicker throughput. And if that was combined with more frequent service, hey, that could be a real opportunity for a bunch of neighborhoods. Secondly, that right lane experiment, I guess, on, was it 93 for buses? Again, if that can work, if that will work in terms of moving people faster, better, and more directly without them having to, at the destination, have to find parking and pay for parking, that could be, and again, if it's frequent enough, that could be a real game changer perhaps as well. Are there plans now to expand those tests, even though the results aren't in? There's probably been some good feedback on them, and what has been that feedback already? I know they're relatively new, but I'm sure you've had comments.
Right, I think those are good projects that are moving forward, and we definitely will be working, coordinating with the MBTA on the projects that they're moving forward with. We did, for dedicated bus lanes, we did add that type of project to our complete streets. So we definitely want to make sure, and we put a goal of 45% of the funding to go towards complete streets in the previous plan. And in past, we have actually upped that target. Every plan we do, we up that funding target for the complete streets. I think before it was like 28%, and now it's up to 45%. So we definitely think that those are good projects, and we definitely will be working with the MBTA and making sure we incorporate those types of projects and discussion in the plan.
I think on that point, it's great to see that the complete streets is moving up on the priority list continually. But it would, to that end, I think the segments within the complete streets that might be getting the priority, if you could see or have a propensity, let's say, to emphasize those center lane and the transit emphasized or transit mode improvements, which obviously would work with the pedestrian improvements and any to and from, let's say, transit hub, so that people can drive maybe 2 or 3 miles and be able to get on a bus or train or something like that within for the rest of their 20, 30 mile commute or 10 mile commute. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, and I think that's also going to depend on the right of way available to do that.
Of course.
So.
And those can potentially be explored creatively as well.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
And next we have Franny.
Yes, I am. Sorry. I think I'm going to leave my off because I have to hold it up to my head. I wanted to say that whoever spoke up about being more bold and moving forward. I mean, if we're going to decrease our emissions by what we have to decrease them by 2030, we definitely have to be radical in these. So I appreciated that reminder, and it sounds like you have plans for that, but I think that we have an opportunity as the advisory committee, as the staff, as the community to work in that radical way. So I just wanted to say that.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Franny. Okay, I don't see any other hands at this point. And so I have a question for
some things. Oh, okay.
You want to add something?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say that the kind of things I'll be adding are connections to community colleges, from homes, community colleges to internships, inter-RTA connections. Those are, and weekend and evening transportation, as the kind of things that, if we're looking at where the needs are, those are some of the things that I'll be looking at, and long distance medical. Yeah. Thanks.
Long distance medical? I mean, I didn't understand that one. What do you mean by that one?
Oh, it's obvious.
Trips that people have to, longer trips that people need that aren't met. The things that are preventing people from going to the doctor because it's too far,
Okay.
and they don't have transportation. So.
Okay. All right. Gotcha.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Okay. So well, actually, you have Jen Rowe.
Thanks. I guess my question is just going to be if you could kind of outline out what touch points you had in mind for engagement, both for coming back to the advisory council, but also reaching out to different other stakeholders like advisory groups and any kind of public facing outreach to regular folks.
Well, right now we're in the process of meeting with the MAPC subregions. And then we're actually also in the process of hiring a new outreach person. So this will be continuing throughout, as we have products, through the needs assessment. We want to get that information out and put it out there and let people know it's there and comment on it. For each of those tasks that I talked about, there'll be outreach for each of those when we revisit the vision, goals, and objectives, and when we are prioritizing projects. All this information will be included on the website, so anybody can go in and look at that, but we will definitely be doing outreach at each step of the way when we get a new person in too.
Great, thanks. And I guess a couple questions actually. So will the needs assessment be available before the rest of the plan?
We hope so. As I said, I had mentioned before about the socioeconomic information. I think it also depends on when that is available. The schedule for that now is kind of like a little later than we want, but we're hoping that once it gets started, we can pick that up a bit, because as I said, we're doing, for all the model work that we're doing, we're using the older socioeconomic data.
Yeah.
And then we want to rerun it to make sure that the results don't change.
Right. Even if the drafts were available, that would be great, because when the whole thing comes out, it's a lot to read at once. So if we could read the needs assessment, or have access to it like 6 months or so before the rest of the plan, we could have that foundation, and then when the rest of the plan comes, it's like half the reading, but you have, you can integrate. It'll just be a better reading experience. So I think you know where I'm headed with that. So
Right.
I'm not saying it well, but you know where I'm going. Go ahead.
And we're also going to experiment with having an online needs assessment as well.
Great.
So information, as it becomes available, we can have that included on the needs assessment page of the website.
Right. Because what I find really good about the needs assessment is that, it really does describe the system to folks. So I think it acts as a really good foundation for those who want to get a comprehensive view of the system, or at least a more comprehensive view of what we're looking at. And yeah, it's just such a wealth of information. And so it really gives you a really good foundation, so that when the plan comes out for what we want to do, you have a better rationale or better understanding, so you can make better comments.
Michelle, did you want to add to that?
I think you highlighted my main point about exploring a different format to get information out there, and we do appreciate all the work that you as the advisory council put into reviewing the document for the current plan that we have. And so I know that I think MPO staff, we're talking with you about the needs assessment, at various points when you were doing the review, and we appreciated your feedback then. And if you continue to have feedback on its structure, or, topics you're interested in seeing, which we'll certainly take as well from the JAM board here, we welcome those at any time. And the idea behind the needs assessment is not only to provide, information, but also to inform the decisions that the MPO members will make about how to put their funding in different initiatives and how to create policies. So, we're working to have, those major products and recommendations available, well in advance of when the MPO needs to make those key decisions. I did also want to comment on, the question that Jen Rowe had raised. We are on our back heels a little bit in the absence of an outreach coordinator, but we're going to work on a plan that not only, comes to organizations like the advisory council, where we have something to show you, but also when we're towards the earlier part of those processes, so we can really get your feedback on the front end. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And so I think is Freddie, your hand back up?
No, it's not.
Okay, fine.
Sorry, I'll
no,
take it out down.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So I think we're gonna wrap up this section because we have a few more things to do before the meeting. So thank you very much. Dare I say, we had a better kickoff than the board did.
And Len, I just
Yeah.
want to say, we'll leave the Jamboard up for, for a little bit so people can still add some of their ideas. So just if you want to go in and add ideas, go ahead.
Sure.
I'm going to stop sharing, but.
No problem. I'm laughing because Matt's laughing. But the board didn't get a jam board. So it's like, but we did. So I'm gonna point that out when we next meet. So make them jealous that they didn't attend our meeting. So thank you once again, and look forward to more interaction on this. All right. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we'll move on, and I guess the question is, do we do the RTA stuff now, or do the election now?
So Len, I excuse me. I will say, Matt is here to discuss some recent MPO decisions.
Good.
So now might be the better time to do it.
Yeah, I was hoping he was here for that. The way it was written on the agenda was different than I had requested, so I thought maybe that meant that Matt wasn't going to be able to attend. So yeah, Matt's here and ready to talk. That's wonderful. So take it away, Mr. Genova.
Hey everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me. So I guess I don't have anything formal prepared, but I'm happy to sort of recap where things landed at the MPO discussion, if that is, Len, like what you'd like me to focus on for this.
Yeah, because essentially we had the recommendations and the first part about kind of grouping the projects together, and the MPO purchasing the materials through MAPC, that passed, but then the other one was a little more complicated and it didn't pass. And I got to tell you, in preparing for this, because I thought I was going to have to present it, it's like that second proposal it just made such sense. And I didn't go back to listen more carefully to why there was opposition. But I know that I seemingly did a bit of a 180 because I was like, well, my colleagues are a little hesitant, so I don't really want to push the motion. But then as the conversation went on, it became clear to me that this was the way to go. It ended up on rereading, seeing that the RTAs were on board with it. I'm now really at a loss as to why it had so little support. So I guess the point isn't so much to explain the vote, because you can't explain how other people voted. Neither can I at this point. But at least let people know what we were thinking, because I think, we're going to be at this point again, and given that the advisory council really cares about community connections, it'll be helpful for people to know what at least was attempted, and then what the decision was about that attempt.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you're, expressing some of the confusion there, I think is very much in line with how the conversation went, because I think it was sort of a bit of a nebulous topic that seemed to go in a few different directions. But I can give a quick summary for folks. So I guess just for a little bit of background. So basically the presentation over the last couple of times that we've discussed the Community Connections program with the MPO was reviewing the first 2 years of the funding program. So the second year was this past TIP cycle, and now we're entering the third year of the Community Connections program. And so we sort of looked back on those first 2 years with the MPO and highlighted things that were working well and things that could be improved upon. And so as Len noted, one of the things that that the board did pass, which staff recommended, was that we move to a collective purchasing model for in partnership with the MAPC for the small dollar capital projects. So things like bike racks and bike shelters, those sorts of projects. I think the overall goal with staff recommendations for both the capital projects and the operating projects, which I'll get to here in a second, is really just to streamline the Community Connections program as much as possible to make sure that it's a sustainable long-run funding source for all a range of different types of small projects, and sustainable in the sense that from a staffing perspective, from sort of a back-end administrative perspective, that there is enough manpower to actually carry out the projects that we select for funding. And so on the capital side, the MPO did vote to go ahead and endorse partnering with MAPC on collective purchasing. And so we're actually in the process of releasing the application for this year. But if you look at those materials, which should be coming out next week, you'll see that we've highlighted different collective purchasing options for some different materials. On the operating side of things is where things got a little bit complicated. And so just as a quick refresher, the Community Connections program up to this point has offered up to 3 years of funding for small transit operating projects. So things like fixed route shuttles or micro transit. And the goal is to use these funds as a way to sort of start up new service that would, after the sort of 3-year funding period from the MPO, would stand on its own in year 4 and beyond. There aren't a lot of good funding opportunities for this around the region. And so the MPO is trying to fill a need here. The unfortunate side of those operating projects is that they are pretty labor intensive on the staffing side of things for specifically for MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning to administer. And they don't really have sort of dedicated staff for that. And so staff there have been taking these responsibilities on for project administration, like over and above their day-to-day like baseline work. And so coming into these conversations with the MPO, the goal is really to work with the RTAs in the region and other stakeholders to identify a way to fund operating projects in a way that isn't super labor intensive, so that we can make sure, again, that if we commit funding to a project through the Community Connections program, that there's actually the staff capacity to make that project happen. And so we talked with a bunch of the RTAs here in the region. So, all three, the Mbta and Nkata and Metro West that are sort of, in the MPO's region proper, but then also the RTAs that overlap with sort of the further out portions of the Boston MPO region. And, we heard generally that there's interest from RTAs in becoming the administrative partner for these small operating projects. Some of the benefits that they noted were that the RTAs already are operating transit service in the region. And so, they know all of the administrative requirements that are needed with, FTA to make these projects happen. And obviously, because they're already operating service here in the region, they know where the gaps in service are and, think a lot about ways to fill those gaps. And so, they seem like a natural partner to propose new service. And especially, ensuring that any new service doesn't like partially duplicate or sort of undermine any existing service. The complicating factor is that while, we heard from 5 of the 6 RTAs that we talked to that, that would be something that they would be excited to do. It's a little bit more complicated with the Mbta because, it's a much larger organization. They have their own staffing challenges, and they're also in the middle of a multi-year bus network redesign process. And so basically the take from the Mbta is that now is just not a good time for them to take on additional administrative duties to pursue small operating grants through the Community Connections program, but that once the bus network redesign process is finished in the coming years, that they might be in a better position to pursue those sorts of projects in partnership with us. And so basically our proposal as staff to the board was to go ahead and require that operating projects do have an administrative partner in an RTA. And then basically those grants would just be available to parts of the region where there's an RTA that's not the Mbta that overlaps with those municipalities. And so that would cover something like 38 communities in our region would have access to these small dollar capital, small dollar operating grants. But the board ultimately decided that because that model would, at least for this year, leave out communities sort of closer in to the inner core of the region that only have T service, the board decided to vote down that recommendation. And then the sort of upshot is that we'll still take applications on operating projects, whether or not they're administered by an RTA. But there's a pretty big caveat that applications that are not administered by an RTA and that would require administration by MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning may or may not be able to be selected for funding because there may not be staff capacity to make those happen. And that's something that we'll just have to determine as we get further into the application process. So that's a lot of information, but tried to summarize that in a way that is somewhat clear, but happy to take questions if there are any.
Yeah, thanks, Rena. And first I want to say Anna Christina's here. I was just thinking about you, Anna. Hadn't seen you for a while. Figured that you were out on some rig in the Arctic Ocean. So glad to see you here, regardless of where you were. Franny.
Wow, do you go on rigs? I have a question. It's interesting to hear about this program and that it was voted down because it was the RTAs and not the intercore.
We lost you, Franny.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
we lost you. You said it was RTAs and not the inner core.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's interesting is that I'm stopped, so I'm gonna look at you. That it goes for 3 years. This is our transportation program in Acton that led to Crosstown Connect started. It was a startup funding program, and we've also used money that came from our RTA that was specifically for startup programs. But that doesn't. It's sort of like, where are you supposed to get the money after that? So I would love to see a setup where maybe for the first 3 years it's funded, and then during that time the staff, the funders, everyone together, the RTAs or the Mbta, the funding agencies and the particular area where the program is happening, work together to secure or identify where the following 3 years funding will come from. It just always seems really short-sighted to just sort of start programs and then, sorry, you're on your own. Anyway, so I see that as a problem, and I would love if somehow we could get past that.
Gotcha. So we can talk more about RTAs. Well, we will be talking more about RTAs a lot more. Andy?
So Matt, I really appreciated kind of the play-by-play there. I am maybe putting on the hat of being here in Cambridge as an organization that was able to participate in the first couple rounds. It is a very complicated process, I have to say, just from experience, trying to figure out who can actually administer the funding, right? Coming from the MPO, whether it's handed over to the Highway Division or Office of Transportation Planning or the MBTA. And we actually, I personally felt like, at least at the beginning, as an applicant, we were spending a lot of time talking just about that question. So I definitely understand why that is the particular issue. I am just thinking about this, just trying to advocate maybe for the other municipalities in the region that would consider this program, because it does look pretty attractive still. Well, two things. So I understand the staff capacity issues. are there opportunities for municipalities to advocate that maybe this is something the Office of Transportation Planning should hire up for? Or is there another organization where it might make a better fit if it's not Office of Transportation Planning or, things like that? I think I understand where the MBTA is at in the bus network redesign process. I see that they're probably not the best fit for majority of the projects that could come through the program, but just imagining that we kind of have to imagine that another municipality may have to kind of negotiate where their funding goes as part of the grant application, to me just also doesn't seem like it would be a long-term sustainable program in any case. So getting after the goal of trying to create a long-term sustainable program, I think the question does need to be resolved, if not, soon, within the next kind of round of applications, right? Like it can't just be hanging out there unresolved, because it kind of has been unresolved for 2 going on 3 rounds. So, just kind of adding to the desire that this does get resolved in a way that everybody can participate, in a way that nobody is excluded, and to have a little bit more certainty, I think would definitely be maybe the keystone that really lets this program continue on for many, many years. So just kind of adding my own experience a little bit in there, but definitely if there's something that municipalities can do to help push that forward, I think I would definitely love to hear that.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Yeah, it was an interesting. The meeting was really interesting then, because I kind of felt that we had 2 people who weren't there been there. I mean, it probably would have had a different outcome, because I think we would have gotten a vote. And I mean, maybe it's just the way things work on the Arlington Select Board. But whenever someone makes a motion, someone will always second it, just as a courtesy, so that you get the vote, meaning you get some information from the vote. But I didn't get a second on this one, and I was invested in it. Because I said to folks, it's like, well, we discussed this, and so let's move this and see where it shakes out, because I didn't say this, but there'll be some information in the way that it shakes out. And and there was the option to vote for both of them at once, or break them apart. And I felt, well, it'd be cleaner to break them apart, because I didn't really want people voting for something that didn't want to, because there was something that they wanted in there. And so the first one was unanimous. The second one didn't even get a second, and I was like, what's going on here? And then I thought, well, maybe it's just a select board thing, and the way it works in the normal world is that people don't second something unless they feel they're going to vote for it. And whereas on the select board, you can second something and not vote for it, because, as I said, you do the second as a courtesy. But my whole point was, I think had it gotten to a vote, it's not clear to me that it would have failed. And certainly had a couple other people been at the meeting, it certainly would have been unanimous, a vote unanimously against it, because I was going to vote for it. But anyways, there we are. And we'll see where we are in 6 months or so. But we'll definitely be talking about RTAs more, and community connections more. So unless someone else has to say something, I'll stop on this topic and thank Matt. Thank you very much, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'll just say, in response to Andy's comments, definitely we are working on it, and very much have your interest in mind at the municipal level to say, we want this process to be as streamlined as possible for everyone. And so, at some point we'll probably follow up with you directly to, hear a little bit more about your experience and things that you think we could provide to be helpful. But yeah, so thank you for being the guinea pig on this one, unintentionally, but yeah. And anyone else, if you have questions on this, feel free to follow with me. But yeah, Len, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. You're welcome. And so before we get to the vote, I'll just do the chair update, and because this was a big part of the update, and another thing I think Michelle mentioned, that was the big ideas was reported at the last meeting. So I'll suggest that people go and get the PDF of that, because it's a really good read. Some people did have some interesting ideas, and I think you'll see some bold ideas in there, and I got to participate in one the focus groups, and if you want to play a little game, See if you can identify my ideas, and if you do, let me know, and I'll give you something like a meal or something, someplace that you want, when we're all comfortable meeting together, or more comfortable meeting together. So I hope that didn't sound like a bribe, for a vote. But anyways, let's move to the next section, the vote, or the elections.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Sorry, I have a cough. Today is the election for the advisory council positions of chair and vice chair. The candidates, there are two of them. They are the current chair and vice chair. It would be Leonard Diggins of the Rider Oversight Committee and Scott Zadakis of the National Rural Transportation Assistance Program. Scott, I really hope I got that right. So before taking a vote, which is going to be done through a poll that I have put together, last year we did it through email with the assistance of my colleague, Kate White, who is unfortunately no longer with NPO staff. So I'm doing this on my own this year. I do want to offer the opportunity for the candidates to make statements prior to the vote. So Len or Scott, if you would like to say something, and also if you wouldn't like to, that's also fine.
Well, sure. So I was gonna pull up my letter. I guess the letter didn't get posted, did it?
Oh, it should have.
It did?
I should have been. Yeah, I mean, I can share it on the screen right now, though. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I need to pull it up. And well, essentially, as I said when I was deciding whether or not to do this again, I've really enjoyed it, and then the only thing that made me hesitate was the possible conflicts with what may happen on the Arlington Select Board. I still have not heard from the ethics office on this, so and we'll see what happens come April. But I am the things that I would like to focus on in the next year are RTAs. It's becoming clear to me that there's a gap. If nothing else, there's a gap in my understanding. So I want to close that gap. But I really get the sense that RTAs are something that we as a region need to understand better and see if we can get them working better. I did a little bit of research on the reports that were on CTPS's website, and I just thought there were more reports on RTAs, but all I really saw was how to create a really effective RTA shuttle. But I thought there was something about maybe a more comprehensive plan for RTAs. Anyways, that's one thing. The other thing is to try to explore visions, for transformational visions, for our regional state transportation system. So just be something that we will set aside some time for during meetings, and just kind of brainstorm and see if we can come up with something cohesive, that isn't necessarily financially constrained initially, but then maybe we do impose that to see what we can really practically recommend to the board. And also, and this is something Scott mentioned, is that work on trying to get new members. I really want to work on that with the advisory board, because I think that will be a way of trying to accomplish two goals at once. And so call and say, hey, on behalf of the advisory board and the advisory council, would you consider me playing a bigger role, or a role in our two organizations? And the last is to really start working with whomever wants to be chair and co-chair next, because the most I am going to do is 4 years, because I just an LRTP cycle is all I really want to do, but I'm not hell bent on doing the 4th year either. And so if someone really wants to do this next year, then let's start working together, so that it is a more effective handoff, and maybe we can start putting some things into place, that we can transition. So there's a smoother transition, but also a more continuity. So if there are things that you would like to see us starting to do, before you would be elected, then let's try to start working on that. So that's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Len. Scott, is there anything you would like to say?
No, not a lot, but I'll keep it short. But I basically I agree with some of what Len said, as far as what I'd like to see more. I think that our group is made up of a pretty diverse set of interests and groups, but I'd like to, continue to expand that. I feel like we we kind of have a cast of characters that we have, and that's great. And I think a lot of us are really good. But I just want to work to expand that, and also to not only for membership, but just expand. I think we've done a pretty good job this year of bringing in some kind of outside the box speakers, and I'd like to continue to look at who we can collaborate with, but yeah, and also bringing in other perspectives to our group. And as long of a document as it was, I think Len had a great idea to review the needs assessment this year, and I think that like if nothing else, it gave us a better understanding of how all this works. So I think we can build on that in the coming year and use it, in our various letters we write and things like that. We're just, we're all, I guess you'd say, experts, but I found that was pretty still illuminating, even for somebody who's been here for, I don't know, what is it, 6 years now, something like that. And I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to say. Actually, really, I had nothing I wanted to say. I didn't know I was going to say anything, but yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. I guess the other thing I was going to say, basically tied into what I was just saying, is that I think like our various expertises really help this group be an interesting group. So I want to make sure that we, are as diverse as possible in a professional sense.
Well, I wasn't going to mention the needs assessment thing, Scott, because I thought that would make people go, no, Len, no, we remember that now. No, don't get Steve all enough to do it. So anyways, thanks for that comment.
And yeah, lastly, I think Len and I work together well too. So, that can't hurt.
I very much enjoy working with you, Scott.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate your statements. And Scott, I especially appreciate you referring to RTAC as a cast of characters. I think it's a very good way of putting it. And it's a pleasure to work with both of you and everyone on the advisory council. So with that, if I apologize, if you can open up the chat, I am posting a poll, which is a ballot, which has the candidates on it. Should only take you maybe 30 seconds to do this. So if you are a voting member, please head over there. And looking through the membership list, we are almost entirely voting members at the moment. And I'll just give folks maybe a minute to fill that out and let me know if you have any issues. I'm going to mute myself so you don't have to hear me coughing.
So I guess you were coughing and not laughing when I made the
comment.
No.
No. That was me laughing, and I apologize. I did not realize that I was unmuted. I laughed It made me laugh very, very hard. And my apologies to everyone for not being unmuted during that.
Okay.
I'm someone who just likes to peek at the limits. And I noticed that it says submitted another response. And I said yes. And then it allowed me to, but I didn't test that out because I didn't want to mess up.
So I appreciate that. And thank you for pointing that out. I basically, in order to make a poll that doesn't require you to sign in through Google, you have to allow for multiple responses, which is something that I discovered in setting this up. So please do not vote more than once. That being said, I suppose it wouldn't be the end of the world if that happened, but I would politely request that people don't do that. So unless people are having issues, and I don't see anything in the chat, or just feel free to unmute yourself if you are having issues. I'm not seeing anything. Then I can safely say that of the 9 votes that we received, 100% voted for Leonard Diggins to remain as chair and for Scott Sudeikis to remain as vice chair. So virtual round of applause for the continued leadership, I think, is in order.
Thank you. And looking forward to working with everyone more, and always welcome your ideas, input for suggestions. So I guess then I need to new business, old business. Anyone has any?
Len, just I have changed jobs and I have a new email. I put it in the chat, but if you could send me an email just so I can get back in touch with you. I had a request for a guest.
Sure. So let me try and get your email out of the chat. And so thanks for letting me know. How have you been?
Really good, really crazy busy because I just changed jobs and it's totally different.
All right. Yeah. And I wasn't making that up about you being on rigs, because you used to go on rigs, right?
Oh yeah,
like months
yeah,
at a
no,
time,
that's what I really wanted to do. So I enjoy being on a rig, well, a drill ship specifically, more than a rig.
All right.
Anna
So
Christina, will you share it again in the chat?
yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Sure.
Because it was on a different device. I did save a picture, but it would be easier.
That's all right. I messed it up the first time because even though it's a new email for me, we are 5 merging companies. They're more of a geoenvironmental and scientists company, and we're going to have a whole new name in January. So I'll have my email will change again soon. But this one is good for at least until January, until they decide what our new name will be.
All right. Okay. Got it. Let me just make sure I have it. And do you have it, Matt?
Indeed, I do.
Okay, great.
Jen sent me a link, so I re-signed up for the notices. So hopefully everything's fine. But I'm like, I've been so crazy busy, and then I've noticed exactly the day after that I just missed another meeting. So I missed September and I missed October. Pretty much missed this one as well.
Oh well.
I miss it.
Well, good. Well, we missed you, so glad you're back. All right. Well, I guess I'll take entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Did someone do the motion?
I'll move.
Okay, great. So we have a motion to adjourn
So I'll second.
by Franny and second by Annie. We're going to adjourn like they do, at least they used to do, for the board. Unless there are objections, we're adjourned.
Congratulations, Len and Scott.
Thanks.
Thank you.